Welcome guys, here with another video, and in this video I'll be talking about the NBA playoff prediction, right? Finally we're in the 2025 prediction, but as we all know, the NBA rating has struck very low and all stuff, because I think competition has actually gone easier, or just like competition intensity is like almost like a lot lower than before. Obviously the injuries, the player load management, and all that problem in the NBA, right? So yeah, playoffs are fun again, like I said, because it just exposed the team, right? Yes, there is a huge difference between the regular season and the postseason, right? Obviously, the playoffs are totally different because the referee call and just based on intensity, right? I say a lot of these teams that are in the playoff are inexperienced and they're built for the regular season, right? So yeah, and because due to like weak competition and all that crazy problem in NBA, it does not matter what seed you are. It's like who has the better experience, who has the better matchup, and who plays the better defense, and that's how you get to the NBA title, right? So this is only conference final because, like I said again, injuries also play a huge role too. Injuries are biggest thing when it comes to sport, right? It does not matter like how good fit you are. Like you may predict, but prediction can be way off because of injuries, right? Just unexpected things that you don't expect it to happen, right? So it's just very common, right? So the reason why I don't make future prediction like, oh, the playoff just started, we go first round, then semi-conference round, then the conference finals, and then the NBA finals, right? Because obviously my prediction is always wrong. I get some of them correct, right? I think for the play-in tournament there's like 4 matchup and I only got like 2 correct, right? 2 out of 4, so 50% chance. The one I was right about is like the Warrior versus Grizzly, right? The Warrior handle their business, but they barely beat the Grizzly with garbage refs, right? Aiding on their side, right? The Warriors just the Warrior is what I thought, like they're pretenders, right? And I don't think they're gonna win championship anytime soon. So even though they acquire Jimmy Butler, right? And let's go to the Orlando Magic versus Hawks. Orlando won, that's what I thought, right? And potentially I heard I trade young guy ejected and all stuff, so yeah, I'm not gonna talk about playing anymore, because I don't think it's that important, right? And then I was wrong, the Kings supposed to beat the Mavericks, but Mavericks has 80, so I should have picked the Mavericks. So if I knew 80 was playing that game, that I would have got 3 out of 4 right. And then the Miami Heat versus the Bulls, yeah. See, this is why a lot of people don't like to play in, because the team that didn't deserve to be in the playoff, they should get eliminated anyway, right? Just imagine, if both of the 8 seed win tomorrow versus the 10 seed. So I mean, yeah, there's no point of putting the play in. What for, right? The team is still gonna get eliminated. They're still gonna get out of the first round. It doesn't make any difference. I'm like, this is ridiculous to like the real NBA fans, right? So yeah. But I want to say this, this is the first time I do not see LeBron James in the play-in tournament, right? Ever since, I mean, LeBron James is like the big problem in the NBA, right? Like every year, his team goes into the play-in tournament, but it just happened not to be this year and 2020, of course, right? Well, yeah, that's because, like the NBA is more pathetic as ever, so that's why the competition has gone down, and the Lakers are surprisingly in the 3rd seed, right? I thought like they're gonna be out of the playoff and all stuff, but yeah, the Lakers did surprise me a little bit, after getting that Luka Doncic trade, right? So yeah, I mean the Lakers look so great, but when it comes to postseason, they're gonna look different. I promise you, they're not gonna look as good as you think, right? So yeah. The postseason is where your teams can fool you, right? It happens to me all the time, I thought like this team's gonna win it all, but then they fooled you. They fooled me and fooled us, at the end, right? So, especially, some delusional fans out there, right? So, yeah, so let's talk about they play a matchup. I mean, I'm recording this, as of Thursday, but I know that the other second half of the play-in, but it does not matter who wins, Obviously, they're not gonna beat the first seed, right? The Cavaliers and the Thunders, opponent is still, tentative, right? So, yeah. So tomorrow, the Grizzlies versus, who? Versus the Mavericks, right? And you got, I forgot. The Miami, versus, the Hawks, right? So, anyway, I think I want to talk about the Eastern Conference first, right? And then get to the West Coast. So yeah, so I was talking about, the Cavalier, versus, who's ever going to take the AC, right? I think the Cavaliers are definitely, better than last year, That team, won like 60 plus game in the regular season, right? But when it comes to playoff, I think they're a little bit more experienced, but then, how far can they go, right? Cavalier versus, whoever they see. So let's say Cavalier versus, Heat, Miami Heat, or versus the Atlanta Hawks, right? I think I'm picking the Cavs in 5 or 6 games at worst, right? Yeah, I do not see the game going to 7 because Cavaliers are pretty dangerous, right? And they should have taken care of the first round, like as of no problem, right? Yeah, just to see, based on the talent of, the Miami Heat and, and I forgot already, the Atlanta Hawks, right? Yeah, the Cavs gonna win in 5. It doesn't matter which opponent. So let's go over with, the Bucks versus, the Indiana Pacers, right? So yeah, so I remember that, Bucks has, Damian Lillard get injured because he has a block clot on his calf or something like that, but wish this guy, the best, Damian Lillard has been the biggest problem on the Milwaukee Bucks, right? Which is why, I still don't believe the Bucks are going to win the championship. I don't believe it. But then they should beat the Pacers, right? Because, the Pacers are like really young team, The only reason why they beat the Bucks is because the Bucks was injured last year. Giannis was injured, right? But yeah, I think I want the Bucks to beat the Pacers just to get their revenge, right? Of what they did to them last year. So I think I got the Bucks in, 6th game, right? And also, this is the series that you all been waiting for, I think this is going to be a very exciting and intriguing series, right? Up the East Coast. It's the Knicks versus the Detroit Pistons. Now, before I get to that prediction, I want to do a big shout out, to the Pistons fan. I know that a lot of Detroit Pistons are not going to watch my video because my video is not popular. My channel is not popular. So if you happen to be a Pistons fan, I give you a big congratulations to you guys, right? You are 1,000 times better than you were last year. You were miles and miles better. Shout out to your coaching staff, all that stuff. And thanks for staying loyal, right? I know that the Detroit really hated their team, but now, they love their team, right? And they're happy, it was a really big flip, right? Last year, they only won 14 games. And this year, they're triple their winning percentage, right? And I feel like this team could have played a lot better, right? Triple the amount of winning percentage in like less than a year is freaking insane, man. Right? You became the most laughing stock of the NBA to now a minimum playoff, and you didn't even fall in the play-in tournament, right? The Detroit Pistons has really exceeded over expectation, right? And that's something to be really proud of. So congratulations, Pistons, right? Again, so they're playing against the Knicks, and I heard that that's going to be a tough series, right? Yeah, I don't follow the Knicks that much, you know, but I heard that, yeah, I kind of look at the Knicks and they look very inconsistent, right? I mean, I'm definitely, no, they're definitely not sweeping the Pistons for sure. That's for sure, right? You all can agree with me. So, yeah, but the Pistons, however, you know, are inexperienced in the playoffs, so I don't think they can beat the Knicks. I just don't think they have enough, right? I mean, they're gonna have a really bright future, you know, the rate they're going, right? So give me the Knicks in 6. Whether the Pistons are a tough matchup or not, I just really don't see the Pistons being the Knicks, right? So yeah, maybe I'll be surprised if it goes to 7. So I say either 5 or 6 game, right? So yeah, give Pistons, you know, a little bit of their respect, right? So yeah, I mean, I know who's a famous, very famous, you know, player on the Pistons, you know, Kate Cunningham, right? You know, they're really big, you know, important player, right? So the next you got Carl Anthony Towns, you know, the new acquisition, right? So I don't know how is that, and then you got, you know, Randall, right? I mean, both teams I really don't trust, you know, but they're pretending because, you know, inexperienced and all stuff, but I don't trust them, you know, to get past the second round in the playoff. I don't trust neither of those teams. So anyway, and then you know, the prediction that you want to hear the most, right? Who that got winning that series? The Orlando Magic or Boston Celtics? Now, you know, the Boston Celtics were the defending champs last year, right? And they got out of the Eastern Conference, right? I say that the Boston Celtics has the easiest path to a championship because everyone in the East got injured, right? And they face against, you know, a banged up Dallas Mavericks, right? You know. So yeah, I say that if one of those teams didn't get injured in the playoff, they will have a legitimate chance of beating the Boston Celtics, right? I mean, everybody figure out like how to beat the Boston Celtics, you know. All this team is just so stupid, you know. All they do is just shoot 3, right? That's not how you win the game, you know. You cannot realize how shot all the time, but you have to, you know, go in the play, you know, make some, you know, smart plays and all that stuff, right? But yeah, you know, it wouldn't be surprising, you know, if Boston, you know, did not get the final, but that's too far ahead. We only want to know like who you pick as the winner, right? I definitely pick Boston over Magic, right? I mean, the Magic, you know, I honestly don't think they should be in this position, but the Magic's been, you know, really struggling throughout the regular season and throughout the year because of, you know, injuries and all stuff. But I see that the Magic can definitely, you know, put up a fight against the Boston Celtics, right? It won't be easy, but Celtics should have enough firepower to defeat the Magic. Should have, right? Unless if an injury happened, then I probably got the Magic, right? But yeah, I see that series probably going to like 6 games, right? I say Boston's in 6. Yeah, maybe minimum 5 games. I give them minimum 5. 6 is still not going to be surprising, and then, you know, it may go to 7. So yeah, I say 5 or 6 games, right? But yeah, like I said, the Orlando Magic are still, you know, inexperienced. They still need some room to grow, so they're not getting out of the first round, right? So yeah, even though, you know, last year, you know, they put up a really good fight against the Cavaliers, I feel like Boston is gonna face the same issue again, except, you know, the Magic are probably gonna be a little bit better, right? The reason why they can be, you know, upsetting in the playoffs, like I said again, because, you know, I don't know what's their issue, but not enough gelling, all stuff, you know, that injury, you know, plays that really affect the Magic, right? So yeah, they have, you know, really top-notch defense, right? Yeah, that's why nobody will be surprised if there is a game 6 in that series, right? Because the Orlando's are one of those top 5 regular season defense. Like, can they do the same thing in the playoff? That's the big question right there, right? And then, you know, let's go to the Western, you know, conference, right? And here things get a bit interesting, right? Let's talk about the OKC Thunder, you know, who they facing, right? And to me, it doesn't matter, you know. well, let's say if they face the Mavericks, then I say the Mavericks can put up a better fight than right now than the Memphis Grizzlies, right? But if the Thunder face either of those teams, it's going to at least 5 games, right? I won't be surprised if the Thunder, beat the Mavericks in 6 games, right? Because now, they got Anthony Davis, right? Will Anthony Davis be a folder, or will he choke in the playoff, right? Now, he's still in the playoff, but he's no longer with LeBron James, right? But yeah, obviously, the Mavericks don't have Kyrie Irving, but I still see that the Mavericks could still win the game if they make it, right? And the Memphis Grizzlies, their leadership is pure joke, and they're just so immature team. I don't think they could beat the Thunder, right? But they could definitely win at least a game, right? So yeah, I say give me Thunders in 5, right? Even though Thunders have a really good season, nobody's surprised there. We all expect the Thunder to be above everyone else, right? So yeah, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should be the MVP vote, right? And not Nikola Jokic, right? I mean, the reason why I have to pick SGA over Nikola Jokic is because I'm not biased, look at the damn Thunders, they're way ahead of the Nuggets right now, right? I mean, the number of game between, the Nuggets, the second seed and the third seed versus Thunder, they're over 10 games apart. You can't tell me that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, has to be MVP. And on top of that, Chet Holmgren got injured, right? So, yeah, I mean, Thunder has the problem here and there, and then they almost won 70 games. Can't you believe that, right? So, and then here's a series that I have not seen in a while, but I've seen this happen, so many times in the past, I have not seen a series or matchup, Rockets versus, the Golden State Warrior, right? The last time I saw it, I was at college, in 2019, right? I remember, they have James Harden, but now, this is a different Rockets team. This is a young Rockets team again. But yeah, I mean, I heard that the Golden State Warrior fans, their fan base are so delusional and annoying, right? This is why I don't want to be a part of the Warriors, right? So, yeah, a lot of people do find, Warriors to be very annoying. But I have to say this, but I have to be honest. The Golden State Warriors the Golden State Warriors versus the Houston Rockets series in the first round, right? But yeah, I say that the Rockets have a higher seed than the Golden State Warrior, but this reminds me of what happened 2 years ago, The Golden State Warrior versus, the Sacramento Kings, right? The Sacramento Kings pulled the Golden State Warrior all the way to Game 7, and I kind of knew that Sacramento was not going to beat the Warriors because, based off their inexperience, right? And the Warriors are just, pure, way talented, and they have, a superstar named Stephen Curry, right? Now, they added Jimmy Butler, right? I feel like, the Houston Rockets are actually the underdog, is not the Golden State Warrior, right? Everybody knows who's the Golden State Warrior, right? Who's been dominating the NBA for nearly 10 years, right? And coincidentally, 10 years ago, the Golden State Warriors won the championship, right? I mean, they've been winning, championship, within, decade. They won 4 championships, right? So you cannot, underestimate them. But the only weakness is that the Warriors are too small, and now, they're getting older, right? As you get older, you get weaker and you get slower, right? It happens to all the athletes, right? I mean, the Rockets just have the youth, but they're too immature again, like I said. So, and then there's one problem with the Houston Rockets that people are probably not seeing. I've been listening to Ticket TV. His name is Jalen Green, right? Yeah, Jalen Green is a clown, right? And I get it, he does not show up in the postseason. So that's a guy that I really do not trust, and he's the one that's gonna screw up the Rockets, right? But yeah, the Rockets should definitely beat the Golden State Warriors. Should have some wins, but it's not gonna eliminate the Warriors. I don't see that happening, right? I don't. So yeah, I will probably pick the Golden State Warrior over the Houston Rockets. And how many games? Easy, 6 games, right? So yeah, unfortunately, you know, the team I want to win is Rocket. I'm rooting for the Houston Rocket, but I feel like they're not going to beat the Warrior, right? Because not on top of that, you know, they have Jimmy Butler. So the Warriors are probably a little bit more lethal with Jimmy Butler, but I don't think the Warriors significantly improved, but they did improve, right? Even though they lost Klay Thompson, you know, over, you know, the offseason, right? Klay plays for the Mavericks, right? So it'll be fun, you know, it'll be if the Mavericks made the playoff, right? That means Klay Thompson, you'll get a playoff without, you know, on the Golden State Warriors. So yeah. Let's see. Yeah, even though, you know, the Rockets are bigger than Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors weakness is just, you know, a bunch of small ball, right? So yeah, then, you know, what playoff matchup did we got? The Lakers, you know, versus, you know, the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? So yeah, I think the Timberwolves, I think I'm better on the Western Conference than the Eastern Conference when it comes to prediction, right? Because obviously the West Coast is more interesting and I live on the West Coast, right? I follow mostly on the West Coast team. So who do you think I got the World Series? So now, yo, this is a different Lakers team, right? They don't have Darvin Ham anymore, and now, yo, they have, yo, coach, yo, JJ, yo, Redick, right? Lakers does not have a head coach, and I say that the Lakers has overachieved, you know, this year, right? Yeah, the Lakers are overachieving, and I feel like, you know, they're gonna get knocked out very soon, right? But yeah, I mean, before I talk about this matchup, I go over the summary of the Lakers and, you know, and the Timberwolves, right? The Timberwolves, I say that the Timberwolves on paper, they have a better roster and they have a better, you know, talent than the Los Angeles Lakers. But however, you know, I don't think the Timberwolves can beat the Lakers, right? So I remember, you know, last year, I remember last year the Timberwolves beat the Denver Nuggets, right? So yeah, in Game 7, right? Anthony, Ant-Man, you know, Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns, you know, they just went nuts in that series. And I thought for more like the Timberwolves are actually gonna sweep the Nuggets, but then, you know, somehow the Nuggets, you know, put up a fight, and then, you know, but now, yo, this is like a different team, right? The reason why I don't see, everybody picks the Los Angeles Lakers over the Timberwolves, right? But when I look at that both team perspectively, the Timberwolves should look better than the Lakers, but they're not, because I feel like the Timberwolves are just a stupid team, right? You know, right? For some reason, yo, like the Timberwolves they don't look disciplined. They just like immature. And talk about Anthony Edwards, you know, this guy yaps a lot and he talks too much, right? Yeah, that's a problem with these superstars these days, you know, like they do a lot of trash talking, you know, they do all these nonsense and, you know, just being a clown. Like, you should just focus on your game, you know, right? Yeah, if the Timberwolves was a little bit more mature, and if the Timberwolves management or front office wasn't being stupid, then they actually have enough roster and enough, you know, talents and all stuff to beat the Lakers, right? But yeah, I say that the Los Angeles Lakers has, you know, obviously, even though they have no head coach like JJ Redick, right? I say that JJ Redick is not better than Darvin Ham, right? And yeah, but then, you know, he should be able to get it done. I know that Luka and LeBron James, you know, these two superstars, I don't think they play together. I don't think they play well together, right? And I don't think both of them plays defense, right? So yeah, obviously the weakest link on the Minnesota Timberwolves is Rudy Gobert, right? Yeah, Rudy Gobert, he's just a fake defensive player of the year, It's Rudy Gobert, right? I remember the history of Rudy Gobert, right? So, yeah, I cannot trust both teams, If either team advances to the second round, like, they both are going to get eliminated, right? It doesn't matter. So, the reason why I got Lakers is because, their roster is, deeper, They just have more, offensive power than, compared, to the Timberwolves, right? The experience. I mean, Luka Doncic, can go off, right? So, let's see, like, why the Lakers. Oh, yeah, also the, Laker has, all 3 off stuff, and also, the referee, right? Whoever played against the Lakers, like, that you also had to play against the referees too, right? The Lakers, not only, I mean, Lakers can be difficult to beat because, it's because of the referee, right? LeBron James team, whoever played against the LeBron James team, they get, like, more foul calls, and then, they get, and then, the LeBron Lakers team, always gets, so much advancements in free throws, right? So, yeah, how the referees, still, manipulate the game. So, let's see, like, what else is. And then, the most intriguing, matchup in the Western Conference Final, I have to say, is Denver Nuggets, versus, the Clippers, right? Yeah, the Denver Nuggets, been a very formidable team, but not anymore, Now, they lost, some key pieces like KCP and all that stuff, right? And also, they just fired a head coach, Mike Malone, right? That's the one thing I forgot, and also this reminds me, and also, the Grizzlies also fired a head coach, Tyler Jenkins, right? I don't know what is wrong with this team, They fired a head coach right before the playoff, right? Just coaches losing job after job, but at the end of the day, it's not the coach's fault, It's the players, right? And players don't take accountability. That's the one thing that's really upsetting the NBA, and why a lot of people don't respect most of these NBA players, as of today, right? It's like they just hate, putting, responsibility, accountability on these type of players, right? Yeah, so the reason why, that series seems to be a coin flip, Nuggets versus, Clipper, is because, the Nuggets got worse and the Clipper got way better than I thought, right? I mean, just look at, past season, I thought, like, the Clippers may end up being in the play-in, right? But then they came up better than I thought because, the health get better, Kawhi was mostly out for the season, right? The Clipper has a really good roster, right? But you know how it is. The postseason is just, different thing. Like, can they make a statement, to, prove others that the Clippers are a serious contender, right? I know that the Clippers are always a pretender, right? But the reason why, they could get far in the playoffs is because, competition, just had died down and all stuff, The Clipper has not got significantly worse. I mean, they're pretty much the same, right? Well, if they have Kawhi Leonard, then they're still going to be contending. But I say without Kawhi, they're going to be, first round exit or a play-in. But with Kawhi, I say that, yeah, they could make their, like, second round exit or conference, semi-conference finals, at best, right? Or if lucky, like, they could get to the conference final, right? If lucky, so. Yeah, I mean, that's just their limit, right? I don't think so. Yeah, the key, I mean, the Denver Nuggets, they have Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, right? And several other key pieces, and Michael Porter Jr., right? This is, yeah, everybody picked the Clipper, everybody picked the Nuggets, right? But yeah, I will say 50-50, And I won't be surprised if this series drag on to Game 7, right? Now, if it goes to Game 7, like, who will be the clutchest team, right? If this series goes to Game 7, then I will probably pick the Denver Nuggets because obviously they have the home court advantage, right? I just heard some narrative saying that, the Denver Nuggets, play at altitude and all stuff. But there's just no excuse at the end of the day because these are trained professionals, right? They should have enough, resource and ability and enough, training program, like how to play, tough environment, right? So if you play at Denver's place, like playing at altitude, shouldn't be an issue, right? So yeah, I think that series is gonna be a flip, right? Now if the Denver Nuggets, like down 3-1 again, just like the Clipper, what happened 5 years ago, then I don't think the Denver can come back from a 3-1 deficit, right? That means the Clippers most likely gonna win this series, right? So yeah, I remember that the Clipper really wanted their revenge, being the Denver Nuggets. I remember that the Denver Nuggets are actually the Clippers, biggest kryptonite, but yeah, the Clippers look different. The Denver Nuggets look different, right? The Clipper got better, and then, the Denver just got, worse, right? The Clipper, they have acquired, some new acquisition, some of the name, that's like unfamiliar of, right? So, and can James Harden not be a choker in the playoff, right? I heard that James Harden is inconsistent, right? That's the only reason why, I don't see the Clipper, being Denver, when it comes to Game 6 or Game 7, right? I don't see it happening because James Harden does play well in the playoff, but when it comes to like Game 6 or Game 7, then I feel like he's going to choke, right? Just like what he did for it. I remember, James Harden did play in Game 6, Game 7 before, and he did not play well, right? And he was missing a bunch of shots. I remember that the Rockets failed to eliminate the Golden State Warriors in 2018. It's because, James Harden was a choker, right? And Chris Paul was not there to save him because he's injured, right? So, yeah, I really don't trust James Harden. I see the weakest link when it comes to clutch time is, his name is James Harden, right? That's the guy I really do not trust, and he is the biggest concern for me if I were, the Clipper fan, right? So, yeah, so anyway, it does not matter like who win that series anyway, because whether it's the Nuggets or the Clipper, if they play against the Denver Nuggets, against the OKC Thunder, they're not going to get out the second round, right? So, yeah, and the Clippers have really good coach Tyronn Lue. Their coaching staff is really good, right? The Clipper has been surprised me a bit because of Jeff Van Gundy, right? They're also one of the top defense in the NBA, right? So yeah, will it be this Clipper team every time choke in the playoff, or will it be a Clipper team that will make it deep in the playoff, right? Due to some lack of competition, or I don't know, right? But the playoffs, and also can Kawhi Leonard stay healthy, right? I think that's the Clippers' biggest threat is the Kawhi Leonard, and now they have Norman Powell, right? So Norman Powell and Kawhi Leonard are the biggest threat, right? And also they have a very formidable defense, right? So yeah. So I think there's nothing else, much to say. So yeah, so which series are not going to be closer? Which is like a gentleman's sweep. So in the playoff, I don't think there will be any sweeps in the playoff, right? Just due to your competition, right? I mean the Cavs series and let's say Thunder series, I say they're both number one, but I say that game is going to go quicker than every other series. The Denver Nuggets versus Clipper, that series may be a lot closer, right? And the Orlando Magic, versus, the Boston Celtics, right? So, yeah, that series should be a lot closer, right? So, but we'll see what happens, And I will, do the NBA bracket. So, the NBA bracket is the NBA prediction, right? And you're supposed to, get it done before Saturday because that's when the playoff starts. Once it starts, then, the bracket is like no longer available. So hopefully I can earn a lot more points there and all that stuff. So, yep.